Bugman. No Way Home is going to hit theaters. Also with it comes the converging of the multiverses. Assuming you really want a speedy update on the three various ages of Peter Parker, don't stress. This video takes care of you. This is a Marry.Recapped of all that you want to know from each Spider-Man film prior to seeing No Way Home. Tom Holland's Peter Parker is first presented in Captain America: Civil War, where Tony unmistakable volunteers the as-of-now bug-nibbled Peter Parker to join Team Iron Man in his battle against Captain America. Consequently, Tony gifts youthful Peter cutting-edge Stark Industries planned Spider-Man gear. In Spider-Man: Homecoming, we observe Peter still on a high from his Avengers experience. Tony, perceiving Peter as still a child, says he ought to zero in on secondary school and leave the superheroics to the grown-ups. This hero-young person balance is one Peter continually battles with as he resists Tony to wrongdoing battle. In the long run, this puts him at chances with Adrian Toomes, otherwise known as the Vulture. Vulture and his posse utilized Chitauri innovation from the Battle of New York in the first Avengers to fabricate super weapons to offer to obscure purchasers. Vulture's group incorporates recognizable comic scalawags like Stunner and the Tinkerer, and a portion of their weapons purchasers incorporate Scorpion and the Prowler, also known as Miles Morales' Uncle Aaron. As Peter keeps on attempting to bring down Adrian, Tony, distinct in the long run, steps in and reclaims the Insect Man suit with an end goal to safeguard Peter from proceeding with a wild pursuit. So Peter returns to his secondary school life and inquired his crush Liz to the homecoming dance. On the fact that her dad makes the way there, it uncovered is, as a matter of fact, Adrian Toomes. Peter and Adrian rapidly conclude each other's adjust inner selves. Also, notwithstanding Adrian's dangers and Tony's numerous earlier admonitions, Peter proceeds with his endeavors to impede the Vulture. This all finishes in a fight close to Coney Island between Vulture. What's more, Peter wearing a shoddy Spider-Man suit. Peter eventually overcomes Adrian and extras his life, bringing about Adrian's capture. Adrian's spouse and little girl Liz then, at that point, move away. Peter returns to school and it's uncovered that one of his cohorts, Michelle, likes to go by MJ. Do you get it? In a post-credits scene, set in jail, Scorpion needs information from Vulture on Spider-Man's genuine personality, yet Adrian denies knowing it. With respect to Peter, his story go on in Avengers: Infinity War and Endgame. In Infinity War, he goes with Tony into space trying to overcome Thanos, yet is killed alongside half of the universe's populace by Thanos' notorious snap. Fortunately, the enduring Avengers turn around the snap, bringing their lost companions in general, including Peter, back to life. However, how treated expense Tony Stark's life. Thus, last we saw Peter, he was grieving the deficiency of mentor Tony as he returns to his typical adolescent life. Indeed, in Spider-Man: Far From Home, Peter is still grieving the demise of Tony Stark and managing with typical secondary school issues. He's still pounding on MJ. His dearest companion Ned is distracted with his new sweetheart Betty. He's still being tormented by Flash Thompson. What's more, his Aunt May has gone into another relationship with Tony Stark's closest companion, Happy. On a class excursion to Italy, Peter and his schoolmates are assaulted by a water natural, which is crushed by Quentin Beck, otherwise known as Mysterio. Mysterio clarifies that he's a hero from a substitute reality in the multiverse whose family was killed by elementals and was presently in Peter's reality to save it from a comparative destiny. Mysterio is being helped by Nick Fury, who gifts Peter Tony Stark's glasses, which would permit him to control the man-made reasoning Edith and order an orbital weapons supply. Peter, yearning for an ordinary life, turns down the proposal to join Mysterio, gives him Stark's glasses, and gets back to his schoolmates. Furthermore, that is the point at which it's uncovered that Quentin Beck was really only a wrathful ex-Stark Enterprise's representative, working with a group of other scorned previous Stark representatives. They were utilizing progressed holographic innovation, furthermore projectors to make the deception of the Elementals and Mysterio's powers to deceive the world into thinking Quentin Beck was an Vindicators-level superhuman. Also now they had full control of Stark's variety of orbital weapons. MJ ultimately finds that Peter is Spider-Man. What's more, that is not by any means the only thing that is found. Peter and his companions reveal reality with regards to Quentin Beck, so Peter goes to stand up to the counterfeit hero. After a battle between the two, Beck is shot and killed by one of the distinct robots. Peter and his colleagues then, at that point, get back to New York City and Peter at last begins a relationship with MJ. But it's not actually a blissful closure for Peter Parker, as while he's swinging MJ around the city, on their first date, a news broadcast by J. Jonah Jameson of the DailyBugle.net goes out across the city showing doctored film of Peter's battle with Beck, outlining Spider-Man as the miscreant who caused the guiltless Saint Mysterio's demise. What's more, to top everything off, the transmission closes with the uncover to the whole world that Peter Parker was Spider-Man. Furthermore, that is all that has occurred to Tom Holland's Spider-Man up to this point. However, it's not exactly the finish of the story. We know that in Spider-Man: No Way Home, Peter Parker will make an arrangement with Doctor Strange to make the whole world fail to remember that he is Spider-Man. Also, that choice will tear open the multiverse, also bring all of the past Spider-Men and their different miscreants into the MCU. Here's beginning and end. You really want to be aware of those characters. 2002 Spider-Man stars Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker. He's a secondary school understudy, living with his Aunt May and Uncle Ben. He's closest companions with Harry Osborn. He's harassed by Flash Thompson, and he's holding on to a smash on Mary Jane Watson. During a school outing to a hereditary qualities lab, Peter is nibbled by a radioactive bug that gives him superpowers. He has sped-up reflexes, expanded strength, he can climb dividers, sense risk, and even shoot networks from his wrists. Peter utilizes his newly discovered capacities to beat up school menace Flash, causing his Uncle Ben to give him the scandalous, with incredible power comes extraordinary obligation, discourse. Whenever Peter battles in a wrestling match to win some cash to purchase a vehicle, the battle advertiser swindles him out of his rewards. Furthermore, when a cheat loots the advertiser, a resentful Peter permits the cheat to get away. The cheat then, at that point, proceeds to kill Uncle Ben, causing extraordinary misery to the blameworthy Peter. In the wake of graduating secondary school and feeling propelled by his late uncle's words, Peter chooses to utilize his recently discovered powers to battle wrongdoing as the covered Saint Spider-Man. Peter, too, gets employed by Daily Bugle manager J. Jonah Jameson to take pictures of Spider-Man, which Jameson utilizations to ruin the legend. As Peter is turning into a legend, Norman Osborn, the dad of Peter's closest companion Harry, is turning into a scalawag. Norman is the head of the logical partnership Oscorp, which is creating progressed military gear, also execution upgrading synthetics. When Norman tests the synthetic substances on himself, he starts to go crazy. All through the film, Norman slips further into frenzy, killing off his business rivals utilizing his particular pumpkin bombs, and threatening the city as the disgusting Green Goblin. Bugman battles Green Goblin, eventually prompting Norman accidentally committing suicide. Whenever Spider-Man takes Norman's body to his home, Harry sees and pledges retribution on the concealed saint, ignorant it was Peter under the veil. Furthermore, when Mary Jane admits her love for Peter, Peter turns her down, dreading that his adversaries would attempt to utilize her to get to him. Peter would be taking Uncle Ben's words on liability to heart. In Spider-Man 2, Peter is disheartened to find that Mary Jane has become drawn into John Jameson, the child of J. Jonah Jameson. Distressed over what being Spider-Man has cost him, he chooses to discard his suit and attempt once more at carrying on with an ordinary life. Harry Osborn has now taken over as CEO of Oscorp, who were presently financing a combination power project by atomic researcher Otto Octavius. Otto turns into a companion and guide of Peter, who has for practically forever needed to work in science. At a public exhibition of his combination power, Otto utilizes AI-controlled automated appendage arms to deal with risky material. In any case, when the combination reactor weakens, Otto's significant other is killed and the automated arms become combined to his back. A distressed Otto starts to turn out to be more and more affected and undermined by his new automated arms and needs frantically to retry his combination reactor explore. He starts ransacking banks to finance his new pursuit, and the Daily Bugle names him Dr. Octopus. At last, Doc Ock goes to Harry for provisions for his new combination reactor, which Harry consents to give him in trade for the catch of Spider-Man. Thinking Peter and Spider-Man are companions, Harry teaches Otto to examine Peter regarding Spider-Man's whereabouts. Thus, Doc Ock abducts Mary Jane and advises Peter to bring him Spider-Man. This prompts Peter to recover his suit and become Spider-Man indeed. Doc Ock conveys Insect Man to Harry. Yet after finding that his closest companion Peter was under the cover, he can't force himself to killing his opponent. Thus, Peter leaves to go up against Doc Ock and salvage Mary Jane. Insect Man stands up to Doc Ock at his new waterfront den. The two battle, and in the end Peter can break through to Otto to make him see the peril his shaky new combination reactor presented. Otto can break out of the hold his AI mechanical arms have on him and penances himself to annihilate the reactor. Peter then, at that point, saves Mary Jane, and presently with the information that he is Spider-Man, she chooses to dump her life partner on their big day to admit her affection for Peter. Be that as it may, things will get more confounded for Peter, as Harry has not just found Peter's secret personality. He's additionally found his father's mystery room containing all of his Green Goblin gear. In Spider-Man 3, things get going pretty incredible for Peter Parker. He's been dating Mary Jane for a year and plans on proposing. He's additionally being educated by another guide, Dr. Terse Connors, and one of his colleagues is the comic book most loved Gwen Stacy. In any case, things as soon as possible go downhill when a meteor crashes on Earth and an outsider symbiote acclimatizes with his Spider-Man suit. The symbiote starts upgrading Peter's most awful perspectives, similar to his fury and self-image. This cracks his relationship with Mary Jane. What's more, it's not only the symbiote Peter has to stress over. There's 3 new Scalawags on the scene to cause a wide range of issues for our agreeable neighborhood Spider-Man. Harry Osborn powers Mary Jane to separate with Peter by compromising his life. Then, at that point, employments his dad's Green Goblin stuff to assault Peter, yet gets his own face scarred in the process. Gotten away from convict Flint Marko, uncovered to be Uncle Ben's actual executioner, staggers into a trial atom smasher, which intertwines his body with sand, permitting him to control and change his body with it. Named the Sandman, Marko starts ransacking banks to bring in sufficient cash to pay for his wiped-out girl's truly necessary medical procedure. What's more, when Peter uncovered rival picture taker Eddie Brock as faking photographs of Spider-Man, Brock is terminated from the Daily Trumpet and structures his own resentment against Peter. At the point when Peter at long last understands that the symbiote is tainting him, he concludes that sound debilitates it and utilizations the ringing of chapel chimes to help withdraw the symbiote from his suit. The symbiote then connects itself to Eddie Brock, who turns into the new host for the outsider miscreant, Toxin. Toxin collaborates with Sandman to kill Insect Man unequivocally. As Venom and Sandman assault Peter, Harry finds the truth about his dad's demise and chooses to utilize the Green Goblin stuff to help his companion. Harry penances himself to save Peter's life, and Peter then, at that point, proceeds to kill both Toxin and Eddie. Stone admits to Peter that Uncle Ben's demise was a mishap that has tormented him right up till today. Peter pardons Flint, what's more permits him to escape to pay for his girl's a medical procedure. Then, at that point, following Harry's burial service, Peter and Mary Jane accommodate. Also, that is the whole story of Tobey Maguire's turn as Peter Parker. Next up is Andrew Garfield, in 2012's The Amazing Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man is a secondary school understudy living with his Aunt May and Uncle Ben. He's tormented by Flash Thompson. He has no dearest companion. Furthermore, he's holding on to a squash on Gwen Stacy. In this variant of Spider-Man, Peter's folks aren't dead. However, all things considered, were researchers dealing with a highly classified undertaking that had vanished a long time earlier. After finding research records from his dad, Peter finds that his dad was chipping away at cross-species hereditary qualities with Dr. Brief Connors at Oscorp. Peter slips into Oscorp to find more. What's more is chomped by a radioactive bug that gives him bug powers. Peter carries his dad's exploration to Dr. Connors, who was feeling the loss of his right arm, which holds the last pieces required for Connors, investigates recovering missing appendages. Connors has been compelled by Oscorp bosses to facilitate his trials as Oscorp CEO. Norman Osborn was biting the dust. Oscorp needed to start running human preliminaries of Dr. Connors' recently made serum. Not needing blameless individuals to be exposed to the untested serum, Connors chooses to test it on himself first, also is stunned to find that his missing right arm really becomes back. In the meantime, Uncle Ben is killed attempting to stop a hoodlum that Peter lets escape from a store. This rejects Peter to make a suit and web shooters to become Spider-Man, scouring the cities. Hoodlums with expectations of seeing as his uncle's executioner. Peter likewise fosters a relationship with Gwen Stacy and ultimately admits to her that he's Spider-Man. Dr. Connors' serum ultimately starts to degenerate him and change him into a monster, human, reptile half-breed. The lizard starts threatening the city and plans to deliver his serum in a substance cloud from Oscorp Tower that would transform all people into lizard crossovers. Gwen Stacy can make a remedy synthetic that returns Connors to his human structure. Also, Spider-Man has him captured. In The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Peter's adolescent's closest companion Harry gets back to take care of his perishing father. Norman Osborn has a hereditary infection that would before long create in Harry as well. After Norman bites the dust, Harry is named the new CEO of Oscorp and reasons that the blood of Spider-Man might actually save his life. Harry goes to Peter, who apparently has a relationship with Spider-Man, for help in acquiring some of Spider-Man's blood. Peter won't help Harry, dreading it would lead to another change like Dr. Connors. In the interim, an off-kilter Spider-Man superfan, also Oscorp representative, Max Dillon, coincidentally, falls into a tank of hereditarily designed electric eels. The eels assault him and he turns into an unsound electrical being known as Electro. Harry is outlined for the mishap, furthermore eliminated as CEO of Oscorp. Harry then groups up with Electro to crush Spirit into the Oscorp building, where Harry takes his dad's trial Green Goblin gear. The synthetic compounds, produced using bug toxin, speeds up Harry's disease and further debases his brain. Later, finding that his dearest companion Peter was, truth be told, Spider-Man, Harry turns out to be severe at Peter's refusal to give his blood and looks for vengeance. Bug-Man and Electro battle, coming about in Peter and Gwen cheating Electro's body with power, killing him. Harry then, at that point, captures Gwen and takes her to the highest point of a clock tower. Peter routs Harry. However, Gwen tumbles from the highest point of the pinnacle. Peter employments his web to get Gwen. Yet the web extends. Furthermore, Gwen's head rams into the ground, killing her. A troubled and culpability-ridden Peter then, at that point, stops his job as Spider-Man. As months pass, Peter ponders Gwen and acknowledges she would have needed him to proceed on as Spider-Man. Thus, when a Russian hooligan, in a rhino mech suit starts rampaging through the city roads, Peter Parker gets ready once again as Spider-Man to safeguard individuals of New York City.